Who's your daddy? There is a lot of importance in knowing who you are and where you came from. Today we hear the people from Jerusalem asking John the Baptist that very question. Who are you? They are looking for some type of criteria with which to judge him. Unfortunately, we often judge people by their backgrounds or family history rather than by who they are. One morning, a professor and his wife were eating breakfast at a little restaurant, hoping to enjoy a quiet, family meal. While they were waiting for their food, they noticed a distinguished-looking, white-haired man moving from table to table, visiting with the guests. The professor leaned over and whispered to his wife, "I hope he doesn't come over here." But sure enough, the man did come to their table. "Where are you folks from?" he asked in a friendly voice. "Oklahoma," they answered. "Great to have you here in Tennessee," the stranger said. "What do you do for a living?" "I teach at a seminary," he said. "Oh, so you teach preachers how to preach, do you? Well, I've got a really great story for you." With that, the gentleman pulled up a chair and sat down at the table with the couple. The professor groaned and thought to himself, "Great, just what I need, another preacher story." The man started, "See that mountain over there?" Pointing out the restaurant window. Not far from the base of that mountain, there was a boy born to an unwed mother. He had a hard time growing up, because every place he went, he was always asked the same question, "Hey boy, who's your daddy?" Whether he was at school, in the grocery store or drug store, people would ask the same question, "Who's your daddy?" He would hide at recess and lunchtime from the other students. He would avoid going into stores because that question hurt him so much. When he was about 12 years old, a new preacher came to his church. The boy would always go into the service late and slip out early to avoid hearing the question, "Who's your daddy?" But one day, the new preacher said the benediction so fast that he got caught and had to walk out with the crowd. Just about the time he got to the back door, the new preacher, not knowing anything about him, put his hand on his shoulders and asked him, "Who's your daddy?" The whole church got deathly quiet. He could feel every eye in the church looking at him. Now everyone would finally know the answer to the question, "Who's your daddy?" This new preacher, though, sensed the situation around him and using discernment only the Holy Spirit could give, said the following to that scared little boy. "Wait a minute. I know who you are. I see the family resemblance now. You are a child of God." With that he patted the boy on his shoulder and said, "Boy, you've got a great inheritance. Go and claim it." With that, the boy smiled for the first time in a long time and walked out the door a changed person. He was never the same again. Whenever anybody asked him, "Who's your daddy?" he'd just tell them, "I'm a child of God." The distinguished gentleman got up from the table and said, "Isn't that a great story?" The professor responded that it really was a great story. As the man turned to leave, he said, "You know, if that new preacher hadn't told me that I was one of God's children, I probably never would have amounted to anything." And he walked away. The seminary professor and his wife were stunned. He called the waitress over and asked her, "Do you know who that man was, the one who just left that was sitting at our table?" The waitress grinned and said, "Of course. Everybody here knows him. That's Ben Hooper. He's the former governor of Tennessee." Maybe you or someone in your life needs a reminder that we are all God's children, and He has a special plan for each one of us. Matthew chapter 7 verse 1. Stop judging, that you may not be judged.